Well, thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce to you our second panel, Readying the Digital Battlefield via 5G. The panelists will include Bong Gumahad, the Director for C4ISR OUSD and Interim Director for Defense Microelectronics at the Department of Defense. Deb Stanislawski, the Director for Tranche 2 5G Initiatives at the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering at the Department of Defense, and Chris Thomas, the Lead Systems Architect for Dell Technologies Public Sector at Dell Technologies. It will be moderated by Will Metz, the National Security Alliance Executive at Amazon Web Services. Now over to Admiral Will Metz.
Thank you, Tom, for that kind introduction. I'm actually pleased to moderate today's session with three distinguished guests from across government and private industry. We actually have Mrs. Deb Stanislawski. Deb is the Director of Tranche 2 5G Initiatives within the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. Thanks, Deb, for joining today. Also, Deb is a career intelligence professional, so she is truly driving change here in DoD. Secondly, we have Mr. Bong Gumahad. Bong is the Director of C4ISR Division and Interim Director of the Microelectronics Cross-Functional Team within the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. And we often say, given the fact that Bong's acquisition portfolio is so broad, combined with the cross-functional team responsibilities that he has, it is exceptional that he would have time to join us today. So thank you, Bong. And finally, we have Mr. C.T. Thomas. CT is the Lead Systems Architect from Dell Technologies Public Sector. And actually, CT will balance the discussion with an industry perspective. So with that introduction, we'd like to dive in to the Q&A. And we'd like to start with Deb. And Deb, given the excitement of the 5G experiments that essentially started in 2020 and are progressing this year as part of Tranche 2, can you spend a few minutes updating us on specifically the initiatives underway and how you are evaluating cybersecurity as part of the portfolio? Deb, over to you.
Well, thank you, Tom and Will, for inviting me to attend and discuss this important 5G topic. I'm very pleased to be here. Yes, let me take a few minutes and provide a few thoughts before launching into Tranche 2, because I think this is very important, that 5G is not a single specific defined technology for our program. Rather, it represents the emerging capabilities of an ever-evolving communication capability. It can be thought of as a point on a continuum, and we are at the 5G portion of that continuum. And everything that Tranche 2 is actually doing is in support of that. And then as we look at your topic in terms of enabling 5G on the battlefield, is that I think we need to have a discussion on the battlefield, because over the last 25 years, the concept of the military operational environment has transformed from primarily a time and space-driven linear view, the battlefield, to a multidimensional system of systems understanding, the battle space. So I'm going to talk to the battle space throughout this discussion. The battle space is really the total environment that must be understood to successfully apply the combat power, protect the force, and complete the mission. And 5G is the future of those capabilities. This understanding implies that managing the battle space has become more complex, primarily because of an increased importance of the cognitive domain, a direct result of the information age and the growing need for more data. The military environment, while having or sharing many features with that of the civilian commercial space, has many important differences. Key amongst those are, while in the civilian world, your competitors may attempt a hostile takeover, they seldom do it with guns or bombs. There are limitations in the form of rules that, in general, everyone follows in the commercial world, and you have an umpire to enforce them. Those rules don't exist in the battle space, and there is no umpire. The only rules are the ones that DoD can force the opponent to follow. DoD must therefore focus on areas that the commercial world may not consider or not see as a priority. The military environment, while sharing many features of the civilian commercial space, has many more important differences. Key amongst those is that while in the civilian world, your competitors may attempt a hostile takeover, they seldom do it with guns or bombs. There are limitations in the form of rules that, in general, everyone follows in the commercial world, and you have umpires, regulatory agencies, and courts to enforce them. Those rules don't exist in the battle space, and there is no umpire. The only rules are ones that DoD can force the opponent to follow. DoD must therefore focus on areas that the commercial world may not consider, not see as a priority, or are unique to the military missions. Our ability to connect and see the battle space is severely limited by our current information transport capabilities. New technologies are flooding the market, but there is no currently reliable way to connect all of them seamlessly and securely in our battle space. 5G will give us the ability to connect given its higher data rates and low latency, in essence giving fiber level or better capability anywhere in that battle space. We're now able to untether from fiber, which brings me to the OUSD Tranche 2 initiatives and the experiments which address the above and more. The second wave of OUSD experiments, or Tranche 2, seeks to develop prototype communication networks to enable rapid experimentation for multi-use applications by leveraging commercially available 5G networks, technologies, and processes to ensure that U.S. forces will have connectivity uniquely suited to the battle space wherever we deploy. Tranche 2 5G initiatives are underway at 12 sites. That's if you include Nellis's Tranche 1.5, which was added last spring, and the 5 sites that essentially make up Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam. Cybersecurity is a key concern and element in each of these experiments and are running concurrently with the development of use cases, development of the test bed, and even transition considerations. Common to all of these experiments is ensuring that they are cyber hardened and able to withstand the active and aggressive attacks that we see on a continuous basis, something that few civilian sites see. While cybersecurity is important at all levels, the military and national security structure is a much more visible and higher priority target than most commercial systems, and as such has a greater burden and a greater cost if there is a failure. So what are some of the experiments? Well, the experiments supporting the Tranche 2 mission set encompass the advanced C2 or command and control capabilities for distributed operations at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, aircraft readiness and development of the flight line of the future at Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam, 5G-enabled advanced capabilities at the National Training Center, Fort Irwin, California, and Fort Hood, Texas, to support readiness and multi-domain operations for the Army through command post mobility and survivability, robotic and autonomous systems. There's also the flexible, locally deployable private 5G network in support of expeditionary advanced-based operations underway at Camp Pendleton in California. The interconnected infrastructure and immersive education and training experiment is just beginning at Tinker Air Force Base. 5G wireless infrastructure for Department of Navy, shipwide and pierside operations are underway at Norfolk, and the establishment of a critical 5G core security network and telemedicine and medical training capabilities set of experiments are getting started at Joint Base San Antonio, Texas. So you can see a full range of experiments and prototypes as we move forward through the next series of prototyping and experiments. The introduction of 5G will provide opportunities, and as with any new technology, vulnerabilities. 5G builds upon the existing telecommunications infrastructure to improve bandwidth and capabilities and reduce network-generated delays. It is important to note that while 5G is being deployed, much of the 4G infrastructure remains in place. Many security features from both 3G and 4G have been adapted or adopted to 5G, so there is a high chance that vulnerabilities in the previous generations are likely inherited to 5G as well. And these are being looked at very carefully as we move through the Tranche 2 experiments. Additionally, those new features in 5G that we're currently looking to experiment with and apply against the mission set may not have undergone rigorous security evaluation yet and may introduce new risks that must be addressed to ensure secure and safe use by the government and the private sectors, including the public. Some key vulnerabilities to 5G are available frequency spectrum, security, and the infrastructure needed to enable it. Integration of 5G on the installations with commercial users magnifies the vulnerabilities as the same great network access exposes us to multiple threats. Millions, maybe even billions of new devices to include Internet of Things, edge devices, cloud, etc., running on the Internet Protocol version 6 or less secure Internet Protocol version 4 equates to that many entry points into the network and opens up the attack surface. So I think you can see that the Tranche 2 sites are diverse and encompassing and really concerned with the application of 5G into their mission sets both now and in the future. And with that, I'll close and go on to the next point.
Thank you, Deb. It is helpful to ensure that our collective audience understands not only the operational enhancements that 5G will bring, but in addition to that, the need to address the cybersecurity issues associated with that implementation. But as we think about moving from experimentation to direct support to military operations, I suspect that you could explain fully the degree to which the successes enjoyed through these experiments will rapidly move into traditional operations. Could you expand upon that?
Yes, well, thank you. First of all, we're juggling a lot of balls with Tranche 2, and we're considering everything from soup to nuts. A poor analogy, but basically we've already started transition planning and partnering even though we have yet to go through full proposals or awards. So the transition planning and partnering early is really a critical road to the successful 5G employment and employment for DoD. In my opinion, planning with the service components is often undervalued for efforts such as these. In, I'd say, all of the cases for each of the Tranche 2 sites, they are heavily engaging with their service programs of record, their transition partners within both the service and their other services. So they are serious about these experiments being successful and moving on to mission success in the future. So these critical transition paths are already being developed now by each of the Tranche 2 sites, Tranche 2 rather, so that the resulting prototypes don't stagnate waiting for the services to resource them. And if you know anything about DoD, that happens more often than not. JBSA is really a fantastic example of how a bottoms-up partnership is being applied with the warfighter and partnering with the Air Education Training Command, AETC, or the Air Force's Training Major Command in pilot training transformation. By creating the core security prototype plan in partnership with AETC, the Major Command has skin in the game or is heavily invested and will be ready to put these in programs or POM at the appropriate time. Frequently, the user has been excluded or is included as an afterthought in the early development of any new technology or capability. We're changing that through our Tranche 2 efforts. Our focus at every level of the 5G development piece is the user and ensuring that their capabilities are enhanced and augmented. This is a synergistic effort. We're developing technologies with input from the user and teaching the user how their capabilities can be improved with the technology. The goal is really to ensure that 5G, when in the battle space, can actually be used from day one, not just be a starting point to figure out what to do with it. One of the key issues as we move forward is an awareness of the difference between the commercial and the military world. In the commercial world, there are laws, regulations, and policies, and industry relies on those being enforced. In other words, everyone plays by some set of rules. In a military setting, there are often no rules at all. 100,000 kilowatt jammers, active attack and engagement, and blowing up cell phone towers are common. Any military use and applications of 5G must consider the fact that not everyone will play nice. A goal of Tranche 2 in this regard is to get industry to recognize and respond to DoD needs early enough to make a difference with either adaptable or defense-specific products. Industries expend significant time and effort developing and hardening their systems for commercial and civilian use. This includes provisioning and application options in areas such as logistics, vehicle maintenance and monitoring, manufacturing, and even hardening against weather events. The military, through its 5G program, is in many cases duplicating or augmenting this work. Unfortunately, there is relatively little focus and effort currently on the challenges that must be anticipated when operating in a complex and ever-changing battle space. These include hardening systems against direct attack, preventing and mitigating the effects of cyber warfare, and intentional physical destruction of infrastructure and components to include those belonging to otherwise neutral third parties. And each of the Tranche 2 experiments, use cases have been developed to address these previous points and many more. As noted earlier, 5G is just a point on a continuum. We have to recognize that there will be a 6G, a 7G, and ad infinitum. We don't want to trap ourselves into a massive investment now that can't be scaled or evolved in the future. For that reason, not only are we currently focusing on the current instantiation of communications technology, or 5G, but we are also looking at how it will change, grow, morph, and evolve into the future, and ensuring that we can exploit and adapt that change at both the micro and macro levels. And I think to sum up, or lastly, 5G has the potential to fundamentally change how we fight in the battle space and even redefine what the battle space is. Even if we don't get it right, others will. We, the US, has to make sure that we not only get it right, but we get it best.
Absolutely. Deb, thank you for that comprehensive perspective. I guess the critical points that we should collectively take away from that discussion, which is the need to agilely develop, test, and deploy, but ensure that the capabilities that are being introduced are envisioned to sustain for the long term. So that is really helpful, and thank you. And actually, it sets up a logical transition to Bong, which is, if we think about this from a major acquisition perspective, and from your perspective in looking at the portfolio of C4ISR systems that you have oversight of, how do you envision the approach that Deb just described moving into major program acquisitions under your cognizance, while simultaneously ensuring that the supply chain that underpins it is secure? Bong, thank you.
Thanks, Will. Great question, and just want to say I'm happy to be part of this panel with you, Deb and CT. So thanks for having me participate in this afternoon's panel. I'll get to that question, Will, but let me say that in today's joint force, we're guided by the National Defense Strategy and its three main tenets or LOEs, or level or lines of effort, meaning or including lethality of the joint force. We want to maintain overmatch against our future adversaries. Two being strengthening our alliances. Any future conflict, we're not going to be fighting alone. We're certainly going to be, we're going to have the partnership with our allies in making sure that we win future conflicts. And then thirdly, reforming for greater performance and affordability. Let me, if you could put the chart up, please, and hopefully you can see that fairly well. But I'm going to walk through kind of in a circle here, starting on the upper left, and talk about the C4ISR, and then pivot into discussing how I see the future of 5G and some of the prototypes and demos that Deb talked about, how it applies to the employment of C4ISR. If you look at C4ISR, by its nature, it's an enabler. In this chart, that's hopefully you can see here on display, shows what I call the objective environment of a future conflict, where we will need resilient data links to enable interoperability between fourth, fifth, and even sixth generation platforms, as well as interoperability with our allied partners, which is critical in a future conflict. Going over to survival command and control, again, executing the joint all-domain command and control framework to ensure that critical data and information is delivered. The Tranche 2 demo that Deb talked about around command and control will certainly help us tremendously in sizing up the complexity of this capability and learn from it. Maximizing integration with other ISR assets at the tactical, operational, and even the national level, really focused on providing the warfighter with the most accurate intelligence, with exploitation and dissemination of critical information, including targeting at the fastest speed possible. Critical to that point, though, is the ability to transport airborne and other data from platforms to users directly. All must be made secure clearly. So cybersecurity is a critical element of this ecosystem. All of these capabilities I talked about benefit from 5G technologies, not just providing a capability for wideband data, but perhaps more importantly, as Deb kind of alluded to, the low latency and speed characteristics of 5G. That is perhaps the game changer, providing advantage to the warfighter. A couple of examples around that, accelerating the kill chain by delivering data faster from sensor to shooter is clearly an advantage in a peer-to-peer conflict. A second example might be enabling smart warehousing. I know this is kind of in the back end, but by doing so, this enables us to track the inventory of parts and equipment so we can be ready at the go if we need capability up to the front. From a purely acquisition standpoint, the promise of digital engineering as applied to acquisition and sustainment is incredibly interesting. Again, 5G's low latency, high throughput, and speeds facilitates the use of digital computing, analytical capabilities, and new technologies to conduct engineering in a more integrated and virtual environment, and allows DoD and our industry partners to evolve designs at the conceptual phase, reducing the need for expensive mock-ups and cost of documentation, premature design lock, if you will, physical testing, reduce and positively impact the affordability of our sustainment systems. So lots of potential to greatly improve our development cycle and make our logistics more efficient and even more effective. So lots of activities around that, Will.
Excellent. And thank you, Bong. I think Deb actually provided a really precise perspective of how command and control systems, logistics systems, smart warehouses, etc., would be enhanced through 5G technology. But if you think about that from intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance systems, we recognize 5G technology will move data and will move data faster. What's your vision for the future for ISR systems?
Another great question, Will. Accuracy and timeliness is the most critical to the warfighter at all levels of conflict. So data is critical, but there could be, also an overload condition of information to the folks that need it the most. We want overmatch in the battlefield, but data and information need to be relevant to the warfighter at a specific time and place. I think intelligence support to the warfighter is benefited tremendously by 5G in a number of ways. One, as a network, 5G offers resiliency and connectivity even in a disconnected operational environment. There's been discussion around setting up mobile, 5G networks to support responses to natural disasters. As an example, after a hurricane where the comms network infrastructure has sustained damage or service disruption. So same concept there for an operational digital environment, as we call it. And again, kind of the Deb's tranche to demo and experimentation at Camp Pendleton, I think will prove out that concept and help us kind of determine application for full operational use. Second one is the technologies derived from 5G that allow for big data analytics, enabling artificial intelligence and machine learning. Automatic target recognition is enhanced, I think, by this, and perhaps reduce the time to get actionable intelligence to the warfighter. So I think there's tremendous benefit from 5G in my estimation, and we've only truly just begun to grasp the magnitude of what this technology can do to enhance the DoD's mission, as well as what it can do to our nation in general, Will.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Wow, CT, what a message collectively to private industry. And I think the frame of reference, CT, Deb actually echoed this previously, is private industry tends to develop, let's just call them game-changing technologies to be able to service our customer base in the commercial sector. And we actually have to demonstrate how these technologies will adapt to the paradigm that Deb and Bong just described. So from your perspective, Dale, from my perspective, Amazon Web Services, as we see 5G technology moving from experimentation to operational decision-making, specifically at the tactical edge, how do you see private sector raising the bar, if you will, to deliver cyber secure, ruggedized edge processing capabilities to both instill trust and confidence in our warfighters? Your thoughts?
So that's a great question. So the biggest piece of it, I think, is defining the edge and all the components that 5G encompasses, right? One of the misnomers, I believe, that may be out there for the common user is that 5G is just a communications network. And as we're kind of pointing out, it is really about data-driven decisions and getting that information and disseminating it out to the warfighters appropriately in an accurate manner, as well as still being able to do that in a secure fashion. So this encompasses our cloud strategy, right? Where that LTE core may live, your near and your far edge, as well as that critical tactical edge, right? Whether or not that's a IoT device or if that's a UTV that's forward deployed to support a small team. So when you look at this, organizations have to start to figure out their strategy as they look at artificial intelligence, machine learning, real-time analytics, as well as being able to do high performance telemetry and that management. A big part of this is looking at, as I'm looking at disseminating this data from a cloud node to the tactical edge, how did I ensure that the supply chain is validated? How do I ensure that nothing's been tampered with as a part of the logistics portion? Am I working with companies that do have the US interests and our warfighters' interests at heart? I think through a number of different agreements and initiatives that we have with the government, whether or not that's CRADA or even as a part of the tranche activities, we're both learning and collaborating together very, very well. And so I think looking at US first manufacturers as a part of the RAN and the cloud providing from infrastructure standpoint, that's going to be critical, and holding firm to our security requirements.
Excellent. And I would say +1. I would actually double tap that CT specifically to highlight the fact that these technologies that you've described has afforded the department to rapidly develop algorithms, to rapidly test those algorithms, and specifically to rapidly deploy them into an operational environment. And I think as we think about the future, working in close partnership with the Department of Defense, how do we create these synergies that are afforded by advancements in software development? Bong referred to it as digital engineering previously, to ensure that we can deliver those capabilities securely at the time, place of the warfighter's choosing is the opportunity that we seek. So I guess we would draw this panel to a closure actually by a frame of reference. If we think about it, 2 decades ago, the cyberspace domain completely transformed warfighting, literally. And as we think about the benefits of 5G technologies and how private industry, government comes together to deliver those capabilities rapidly and securely for sustained military operations is our collective goal. So I'd like to conclude this panel by, first of all, thanking Tom Billington. Tom, Billington Cybersecurity, and specifically this summit, is the right place at the right time to be able to have these conversations. And to our panelists, Deb, Bong, CT, we look forward to the journey ahead. Thank you very much. And back to you, Tom.